Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, Tuesday, and we are excited to be here as always. I am joined by my equity buddy Ren. How are you?
I'm good. We're doing a bit of a different, we're doing a different continent today.
Yes.
We speak a lot about Australia. You know, this is AusBiz. We speak a lot about the US, both on this show and on the podcast. But we're branching out a little bit today. We're going somewhere a bit different. We
are heading across to Europe. As Ren said, it's a continent that we don't often speak about, but is home to many companies that I guess we've all engaged with before or are very aware of. So we thought we'd take a bit of a shallow dive, given that we only have sort of 15 minutes to get through it. And of course, we've brought in an expert to help us through it. And today we are joined in the studio by James Rodda from Antipodes. James, how are you going?
Very well. Nice to be here.
So James, as we said, look, we generally talk a lot about the US,
Yep.
We talk a lot about Australia, but not a lot about Europe.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the, I guess, to kick things off, some of the big themes coming out of Europe at the moment from Antipodes' point of view that you're kind of interested in?
So probably starting with the macro, I think we're at the early stage of a cyclical recovery in Europe, which is fairly interesting. The recovery, how will it be led from an investment point of view? We think decarbonisation's an area that, particularly for Europe, more than other regions, is interesting to look at. Then you've got things like household balance sheets, etc. So it's probably the only region where the household has less debt than pre-GFC.
Wow. Interesting.
And that's starting to expand and grow again, which is certainly supportive of most European industry. In terms of major themes, I guess there's two I'd probably focus on today. It would be digitisation, which is obviously a theme globally. It's not really unique to Europe. So we'll let that one pass through, but it's something that we really focus on in all our investments at the moment in Europe and globally in general. And then decarbonisation. So big picture decarbonisation means that basically to hit global renewable energy targets, we need to go from sort of 5% renewables to 70% renewables over the next 50 years. So it's a super cycle of investment. It's a multi-decade investment cycle. And we think Europe's pretty well placed.
So in terms of particular countries that are doing quite well on the decarbonisation, are there any that are like the gold standard of the world that you're watching in Europe?
Yeah. Look, it's pretty broad across Europe. Certainly, Germany. We have a large investment in a company in France, which I can talk about in a moment. But the continent is generally aligned in the same principles, and they have an aligned European carbon policy. Which is down to net zero by 2050. They've brought that forward from 2060 previously. So it is certain countries, and we can be a little bit selective there, and we have been. But it will be something that benefits the whole region.
So in terms of what falls under decarbonisation, we think about renewables, we think about solar, we think about wind. Are there any other sort of major themes under that decarbonisation that we should be aware of?
Yeah. I mean, look, electric vehicles.
Yes.
Right.
Big one.
So that's obviously another one.
You forgot it. Or was it a softball?
Electric vehicles, but there's a whole host of things that are associated on the side as well, right? There's
I found a few vehicles near you.
Home energy efficiency is a big one. So this is insulation and things like that. Rebuilding the grid. So it's not just building a solar plant or a hydro plant or a wind plant or whatever it might be. There's all that grid investment as well. And then probably just taking it back to Europe. So why is Europe special in this regard? So Europe is a net energy importer of fossil fuels. It's about 200 billion per annum. It's 1.2% of GDP. And so we look around the world and we'll say, right, Europe will end up where they end up, net zero 2050. China's moving the same way from a higher base. And then obviously the new US administration is probably going to head in the same direction. So why is Europe different? So the US is energy self-sufficient. It's a net energy exporter. So in terms of a net benefit to the economy, there's no net benefit to the US from a purely economic perspective. And again, we don't doubt that China will get there as well. But the Chinese economy is 4 to 5 times more energy intensive than the European economy or the US economy. So the impact to some of their industries from decarbonisation and the competitive advantage they get, we might talk about Norsk Hydro, for example, from having a lot of coal energy and cheap coal energy potentially disappears for China.
So before we do get into some of the specific stocks that Antipodes is investing in, we might start at the process that you go through to actually find some of these stocks in the investment process. So what does that sort of look like, and what are you really focusing on? Yeah,
look, so for us, Europe is no different to anywhere else globally. We sort of adopt a global process, if you like. Antipodes is a pragmatic value manager. So what does that mean? It means we have a value bias for sure in terms of the companies that we buy, but we're looking to buy good businesses at great valuations. That's basically what we do. We're not looking to buy average companies at really low valuations. If you like. In terms of the research process, I'd probably talk about, say, structural change versus cyclical change is something we focus on a lot. So economies, industries, companies go through cycles, they go through structural change, and then they can go through disruption as well, which is the thing that I guess ruins the normal wrecking ball at times. And obviously the focus of markets is on old economy companies, if you call it, legacy, all those terms. Being disrupted. You also see a lot of technology companies get disrupted at different points in time. So we will also focus on that. In terms of things that are interesting at the moment, probably multiple dispersion is at record highs. You hear people talk about this all the time. So between regions and between sectors, it's true, but it's also true within sectors. So at the moment, the perceived winners in sectors are trading at and potentially companies placed in certain geographies like the US are at relatively high valuations, especially compared to similar companies in Europe. So we think that's going to be a good place to hunt over the next couple of years.
So you mentioned disruption there, and I think we've lived through 15 years of disruption being a very US-centric conversation, and the big tech names rightfully have been the front and center of that conversation. What's going on in Europe in that space? Are we seeing, European native tech names emerge and sort of disrupt maybe that US stranglehold in some of these sectors?
Yeah, we are, but there's no sort of mega European tech firms that have really emerged. There's leaders in certain areas. Spotify always is one that's brought up. Adyen in payments. There's a strong company. SAP is a software company that's very large, even if it's not growing very well at the moment, and is perhaps being disrupted itself. But generally, I think in Europe, when you want to invest for technology, you're looking at industrial technology. So Siemens is a company we have a large position in. Siemens is the world leader in probably integrating industrial hardware with industrial software. So we're talking everything from the start of the stack. So it might be an automotive vehicle, or it might be designing an energy plant, a renewable energy plant, you name it. You can start with their software, do all the testing, the prototyping, right through the design phase, and then they'll supply the manufacturing equipment, the robotics, and it'll all be integrated in one nice package. So we're looking for digital leaders like that, and then obviously beneficiaries of technology as well. So.
Yeah, we tried to build a sustainability ETF last week, and I'm not sure, I can't remember why, but Siemens consistently appeared in rankers for, being perceived as a sustainable company. Can you remember why?
I think renewable energy. I think it's on the forefront of that.
Yeah, look, I mean, so again, taking it back to decarbonisation, right? So Siemens is going to be heavily involved in bringing the automakers up to speed in terms of improving their manufacturing processes, which need to be changed, the design processes which need to be changed for electric vehicles. Siemens will be a big part of that. Siemens will be a big part of building the new grid, electric grid for the future. Again, designed through products that you will actually implement and put in the grid, end to end. And then just general industrial greening and efficiency technologies. They've got a few smaller businesses on the side that do that type of thing. So it's really, look, for us, it's a stock that grows. It's going to grow about 10% on the top line. It's trading at 15 times earnings. It's a world leader. It's got hardware, software integration. And look, if we pulled apart robotics specialist companies, you guys probably maybe seen some of the robotics ETFs, 100 times earnings or no earnings, that type of thing, and maybe potentially growing a little bit faster than Siemens. And likewise, some of the software companies. And you put it together, actually, it's a very compelling proposition for their end customers. And that's why it's growing nicely. And it's 15 times earnings. So we think it's pretty interesting to play some of those themes.
Yeah. So that's one company that you have in your portfolio, Siemens. What are some of the other companies in Europe that are particularly interesting at the moment?
Yeah. So again, I'll stick with decarbonisation first, and then maybe go to a digitisation one at the end. So Norsk Hydro's a company I mentioned at the start. It's an aluminium producer. So aluminium's, look, it's a fast-growing commodity industry. It's a GDP plus. It benefits from lightweighting and things like that, which are in more demand as energy efficiency becomes critical. So we're trying to lightweight cars, electric vehicles. We're trying to lightweight airplanes. We're trying to, you name it, we're lightweighting. So demand for aluminium has been very strong. The problem with investing in aluminium for a long time is that China's gone over, call it 15 years, from virtually nothing to be about 60% of global aluminium production and an exporter. And as I mentioned at the start, the Chinese economy is very energy intensive and uses a lot of coal. And particularly for aluminium, a lot of it's produced in the northwest region of China, where they've got abundant supplies of basically locked coal that they can't export anywhere or move to the populations. So what they do is they build big coal power plants and they power heavy industry, like aluminium, and they pollute a lot. And so we think going forward, China's definitely going to hit these goals and try to reduce emissions. And the easy wins are things that are not strategic for them. And aluminium is not strategic for China, whatsoever. So what does that mean? It means the Chinese, they'll probably stay in the industry. You'd be surprised if they leave, but they've got a big capex cycle coming. And they're going to have to spend a lot of money. The marginal cost of production of aluminium in China is going to go through the roof. Where does that leave Norsk? Well, Norsk is the only green-powered aluminium producer with its smelters in the world. It's hydro-powered, all the costs are sunk. Company, it's been a good investment for us so far, but it's still sitting there at half replacement value. And so as companies, and indeed the world, demand everything to be greened, industries that rely on cheap, low-cost, dirty power are going to see cost rises, which is going to pass through the end price of the product, and Norsk's margins hopefully will benefit from that higher cost curve.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
So we've probably got time for one more. What else is kind of appearing on the list at Antipodes from an investment point of view? Yeah,
look, I think we can talk about Volkswagen's an interesting one, maybe if you stay within industrials. Look, it's another one of those companies that's been sort of thrown out as an old economy company. And if I keep it simple and brief, basically they've got the largest R&D budget of any automaker in the world by about 40%.
More than Tesla.
More than Tesla. I think it's more than Tesla's revenue. It's pretty similar. It's about $14 billion a year.
Wow.
So it's a very large R&D budget. They've got some great brands, Porsche, Lamborghini, Audi, obviously VW. And the company is totally committed to a move to electric vehicles. So if we look at it like that, it's one of those stories, and these are the stocks that have worked in value land. It's when a business goes from being seen with this multiple dispersion to be out in the dumps, it's got no future, to actually this is a company that's going to survive and thrive in the new world. Volkswagen held their battery day last week, which was fairly well received by the market. And certainly in terms of electric vehicle production, we expect them to, within a couple of years, to be one of the world leaders, if not the world leader, in terms of the number of vehicles produced.
Wow.
It's trading on 7 times earnings. So.
Wow. Heard it here first.
Yeah, well, Kathy Wood earlier this week has come out and said her price target for Tesla is $3,000, which I think gives it a market cap of around $3 trillion. So if Volkswagen can just take some of that value,
Just a
then
tiny little bit, we'll be fine.
you'll be laughing.
That's right, and that's an example of the multiple dispersion within industries that we talk about. It's an extreme one, and Tesla's got a lot of great attributes, obviously. But it is actually quite consistent across sectors that you see these extreme differences in valuation. So that's something we're definitely playing for in Volkswagen.
Well, James, a lot to unpack and plenty more companies to talk about, but we have run out of time for today.
Great.
It'd be great to get you back on at some point to go
15
through.
minutes didn't feel like
There's plenty of other companies that we didn't get to. So
That's right.
yeah, mark it in the diary. We'll get you back on. But appreciate your time today.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
That brings us to the end of another episode of Equity Mates for Tuesday. If you'd like more information on what we do, head to equitymates.com. Otherwise, you can follow us on all the social channels or flick us an email at contact@equitymates.com. Tomorrow around Watchlist Wednesday.
Watchlist Wednesday, we've got Nick Cregan, who's going to be speaking to us about 3 companies on his watch list. Thursday, we're going to be covering some of the most interesting stories we've found in the news recently. So join us same time, same place tomorrow.